The antique shop on Elm Street had been condemned for 3 months, but that didn't stop Aria Chen from pressing her face against the grimy window, breath fogging the glass as she peered into the dusty interior. Her friends clustered behind her, their whispered dares and challenges echoing in the narrow alley between buildings. The October wind carried the scent of dying leaves and something that made her skin prickle with unease. "You can't actually be considering this," Maya whispered, her voice tight with nervous energy. "Breaking into an abandoned building? That's literally illegal, Aria." Aria stepped back from the window, wiping her hands on her jeans. The fabric was already stained with grime from their afternoon of urban exploration, but she hardly noticed. Her attention was fixed on the darkened shop beyond the glass, where shadows seemed to move independently of any light source. "It's not really breaking in if the door's already open," she said, nodding toward the entrance where the wooden door hung askew on its hinges. "The door being broken doesn't make it less illegal," Maya insisted, but her protest lacked conviction. She'd been the one to suggest they explore the old district in the first place, drawn by the same morbid curiosity that had led them through 6 abandoned buildings that afternoon. Connor, ever the instigator, grinned and pulled out his phone to illuminate the shop's interior. "Come on, Maya. Live a little. Besides, Aria's right, we're not breaking anything that isn't already broken." He swept the light across the interior, revealing toppled shelves, scattered books, and furniture draped in sheets that had turned gray with age and dust. Aria pushed the door open further, wincing as it creaked on rusted hinges. The sound echoed through the shop like a warning, but she ignored it. Something about this place called to her in a way she couldn't explain. It wasn't just the thrill of trespassing, or the appeal of solving a mystery. It was deeper than that. A pull she felt in her bones. The shop's interior was larger than it appeared from outside, stretching back into shadows that seemed to swallow Connor's phone light. Dust motes danced in the beam as they stepped inside, their footsteps muffled by decades of accumulated grime. The air tasted stale and metallic, with an underlying sweetness that reminded Aria of flowers left too long in water. "This place gives me the creeps," Maya muttered, but she followed them deeper into the shop. Her voice sounded different here, smaller somehow, as if the shadows were absorbing the sound. Aria moved through the cluttered space with careful steps, her eyes adjusting to the gloom. The shop appeared to have specialized in antiques and curiosities. Ornate mirrors hung on the walls, their surfaces so tarnished they reflected nothing but darkness. Crystal figurines set on shelves, their faceted surfaces catching and scattering what little light penetrated the space. Books with cracked leather bindings were stacked in precarious towers, their titles written in languages she couldn't identify. "Look at this stuff," Connor said, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and disgust. He picked up a small bronze statue of a creature that might have been a dragon or a serpent, its features too worn to make out clearly. "Who buys this kind of junk?" "Collectors," Aria said absently, her attention caught by something in the back corner of the shop. "People who believe in the stories behind the objects." It was a mirror, but unlike any she'd ever seen. While the other mirrors in the shop were ornate and decorative, this one was simple in its construction. A rectangle of dark glass set in a frame of what looked like blackened silver. The metal was etched with symbols that seemed to shift and change when she looked at them directly, as if they were written in a language that existed only in peripheral vision. But it was the glass itself that truly captured her attention. It wasn't black, as she'd first thought, but a deep, dark red that seemed to pulse with its own internal light. The surface moved like liquid, rippling and flowing despite being solid to the eye. It reminded her of blood, thick and rich and alive. "Aria?" Maya's voice seemed to come from very far away. "What are you looking at?" "A mirror," Aria said, though the word felt inadequate. She approached it slowly, each step deliberate and measured. The air around the mirror felt different, charged, like the moments before a thunderstorm. "It's beautiful." Connor appeared at her shoulder, his phone light illuminating the mirror's surface. The red glass seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it, creating an effect that was both mesmerizing and unsettling. "That's the ugliest mirror I've ever seen," he said. "It looks like it's made of blood." "The blood mirror," Maya read from a small placard at the base of the frame. Her voice was hushed, reverent. Legend says it was crafted by a sorcerer who fell in love with a king, but the king was bound to another realm by the gods' curse. The mirror was meant to bridge their worlds, but instead, it became a prison. Aria barely heard her. The mirror's surface was hypnotic, drawing her closer with each passing second. She could swear she saw shapes moving within the red depth shadows that suggested faces, hands, entire figures trapped within the glass. The longer she looked, the more convinced she became that something was looking back. "We should go," Maya said, but her voice lacked urgency. She too seemed caught in the mirror's spell, her eyes fixed on its shifting surface. "Just a minute," Aria said. She was close enough now to see her own reflection in the glass, distorted and strange. Her face looked different in the red light, older, more angular. With eyes that seemed to hold secrets she didn't remember learning. The symbols on the frame were clearer now, and she realized they weren't just decorative. They were words, written in a script that seemed familiar despite being completely alien. As she watched, the symbols began to glow with a faint silver light, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "Aria, seriously, we need to leave." Maya's voice was sharper now, cutting through the strange lethargy that had settled over the group. "Something's wrong with this place." But Aria was already reaching out, her fingers drawn to the mirror's surface by a compulsion she couldn't resist. The glass looked solid, but she suspected it would feel like liquid beneath her touch, warm and yielding like skin. "Don't touch it." Maya lunged forward, but she was too late. Aria's fingertips made contact with the mirror's surface, and the world exploded into sensation. The glass was warm, just as she'd expected, but it was also alive. She could feel it pulse beneath her touch, could sense the vast intelligence that dwelt within its depths. The red glass rippled outward from her touch like water, and she felt herself being drawn forward, cold into the mirror's embrace. Pain lanced through her skull, sharp and immediate. She tried to pull her hand back, but her fingers had sunk into the glass as if it were made of thick honey. The mirror's surface clung to her, drawing her deeper with each passing second. She could hear Maya and Connor shouting her name, but their voices seemed to come from a great distance, muffled by the blood-red glass that was now creeping up her wrist. Then the voice spoke, and everything changed. "Who dares disturb my prison?" The words echoed not in her ears but in her mind, spoken in a voice that was deep and resonant, and touched with an authority that made her bones ache. It was the voice of someone accustomed to being obeyed, someone who had never needed to raise their voice to command attention. I didn't mean to." The thought formed without her conscious direction, projected into the strange mental space where the voice dwelt. "Didn't mean to?" There was amusement in the voice now, tinged with something that might have been relief. "Child, you have done what no one has managed in over 1,000 years. You have touched the blood mirror and lived." The glass had reached her elbow now, and she could feel her body being pulled forward. Maya and Connor were grabbing at her other arm, trying to pull her back, but they might as well have been trying to stop a tide. The mirror's power was absolute, inexorable. "Let me in," the voice whispered, and now she could hear the longing beneath the authority. "Let me share your flesh, your world, your time. I have been alone so long. Who are you?" She managed to think, even as the glass crept past her elbow toward her shoulder. "I am Thorne," the voice replied, and with the name came a flood of images: a man with dark hair and eyes the color of storm clouds, dressed in robes that seemed to be cut from shadow itself. A crown of black metal sat on his brow, its surface inscribed with the same symbols that decorated the mirror's frame. "I was once a king, before the gods decided my love was too dangerous for their carefully ordered world." The images shifted, showing her a vast realm of twisted spires and floating islands, where the sky was the color of old blood and creatures of shadow served as courtiers. Then the scene changed, and she saw the same man Thorne standing before a group of beings that blazed with divine light, his face set in lines of defiance even as they spoke words of judgment. "They couldn't kill me," his voice continued, "so they did something worse. They bound me to this mirror, trapped between worlds, able to see but never touch, never act, never live." The glass had reached her shoulder now, and she could feel it beginning to affect her thoughts. Her consciousness was expanding, stretching to accommodate another presence. It should have been terrifying, but instead, she felt a strange sense of completion, as if she'd been incomplete her entire life without knowing it. "I won't hurt you," Thorne's voice was gentler now, almost pleading. "I swear it on my crown and my name. I need only to share your flesh, to experience the world through your senses. In return, I can give you power beyond imagining, knowledge that spans millennia, magic that could reshape reality itself." Maya and Kana were screaming now, their voices high and panicked, but Aria barely heard them. The mirror's surface had reached her neck, and she could feel her physical body beginning to dissolve, to merge with the glass and the presence within it. Part of her wanted to fight, to resist the dissolution of herself, but a larger part welcomed it. She had always felt like she was waiting for something, searching for a purpose that remained just out of reach. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was what she'd been born for. Yes, she thought, and felt Thorne's presence rush into her mind like a tide. Yes, I'll let you in. The world went red, then black, then nothing at all. She woke up in her own bed, sunlight streaming through her bedroom window. For a moment, she lay still, trying to process what had happened. The antique shop, the mirror, the voice, it all seemed like a dream, too strange and vivid to be real. But when she sat up and looked at her hands, she could see the faint traces of silver scars on her fingertips, marks that hadn't been there before. "Good morning," Thorne's voice said in her mind, and she nearly jumped out of her skin. "I wondered when you would wake. You've been unconscious for nearly 12 hours. You're real," she thought, her mental voice shaky with disbelief. "You're actually in my head." Indeed. She could hear the smile in his voice, could almost see the expression on his face even though he had no physical form. "And you, my dear Aria, are the first person to speak to me in over 1,000 years. You cannot imagine what a relief it is to have a conversation." She looked around her bedroom, trying to ground herself in familiar surroundings. Everything looked exactly as she'd left it, her desk covered with textbooks and papers, her closet door hanging open to reveal the usual chaos of clothes and shoes, her laptop sitting closed on her nightstand. But something felt different, as if the room itself had shifted slightly while she wasn't looking. Maya and Connor, she thought suddenly. Are they okay? What happened after I touched the mirror? They pulled you away eventually, Thorne replied, his mental voice thoughtful, though not before the connection was established. As for what they think happened, well, I suspect they believe you had some sort of seizure or fainting spell. The human mind has a remarkable ability to rationalize the impossible. Aria swung her legs out of bed and stood up, immediately regretting the movement as the room spun around her. She felt weak, drained, as if she'd been running for hours without rest. Her reflection in the mirror across the room looked normal, but she could swear her eyes were slightly different, darker, more knowing. The bond takes time to stabilize, Thorne explained, apparently sensing her discomfort. Your body is adjusting to my presence. The weakness will pass. This is insane, she thought, sinking back onto her bed. I have a dead king living in my head. This can't be real. Not dead, Thorne corrected, and she could hear the sharp edge in his voice. Trapped, bound, exiled, but not dead. If I were dead, this would be impossible. She could feel his presence more clearly now, like a warmth spreading through her mind. He was careful not to intrude on her thoughts, she realized, keeping to his own mental space unless she directed her attention toward him. It was almost like having a roommate, if roommates could share headspace. What do you want from me? She asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Freedom, he replied simply. I want to walk in the world again, to feel sunlight on my face and wind in my hair. I want to live, Aria. And in return, I can give you everything you've ever dreamed of. You don't even know what I dream of. Don't I? His voice was gentle now, almost amused. You dream of purpose, of meaning, of being more than just another face in the crowd. You dream of magic, of adventure, of love that transcends the ordinary. I can give you all of that and more. She wanted to deny it, to tell him he was wrong, but the words stuck in her throat. He was right, of course. She had always felt like she was meant for something more than her ordinary life, had always believed that somewhere out there was a story waiting for her to step into it. How? She asked finally. How can you give me any of that when you're trapped in a mirror? The mirror is cracked, Thorne said, and she could hear the excitement in his voice. When you touched it, when you accepted me, you created a fissure in the spell that binds me. It's small now, barely noticeable, but it's growing. Each day, each hour, the crack spreads a little further. Soon, I will be able to manifest in your world, to take physical form once more. And then what? She asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Then we reshape the world, he said simply. Together. The next few days passed in a blur of normalcy tinged with the surreal. Aria went to classes, did her homework, hung out with Maya and Connor, all while carrying on silent conversations with the ancient king who had taken up residence in her head. She learned that Thorne had been a scholar as well as a ruler, that his knowledge of magic and history was encyclopedic, that he had once commanded armies and ruled over a realm that existed in the spaces between worlds. She also learned that he was surprisingly good company. He had a dry sense of humor that often caught her off guard, and he seemed genuinely interested in her life and her world. He asked endless questions about modern technology, about the way society had changed, about the small details of daily life that fascinated him. In return, he told her stories of his own time, of battles fought with swords made of starlight, and courts held in palaces that floated on clouds. But it was the dreams that truly brought them together. Each night, when she closed her eyes, Aria found herself not in her own dreams, but in Thorne's memories. She walked through the halls of his shadow palace, met the courtiers who had served him, witnessed the great events that had shaped his reign. She saw him as he had been tall and commanding, with eyes that held the weight of centuries and a smile that could stop hearts. More than that, she felt what he had felt. The loneliness of command, the burden of making decisions that affected entire worlds, the desperate love that had ultimately led to his downfall. She learned about Lysander, the sorcerer who had loved him, who had crafted the blood mirror in a desperate attempt to bridge the gap between their worlds. She felt Thorne's anguish when the gods had judged their love too dangerous, too powerful, too likely to upset the cosmic order. He died trying to free me, Thorne told her during one of these dream visits, as they stood in the ruins of what had once been Lysander's tower. The gods struck him down, but not before he completed his greatest work. The mirror was meant to be a doorway, a way for us to be together despite the barriers between our realms. Instead, it became my prison. I'm sorry, Aria said, and meant it. She could feel his grief like a physical weight, the sorrow of a love lost and a freedom stolen. Don't be sorry, he replied, turning to face her in the dream. Be angry. Be furious. Help me make them pay for what they've done. But even as he spoke of revenge, Aria could see the vulnerability beneath his words. This was a man who had lost everything, who had been alone for longer than entire civilizations had existed. His anger was real, but it was born from pain, not malice. What were you like? She asked him one night as they sat in the garden of his memory palace. Before all this, I mean. Before the gods and the mirror and the curse. Happy, he said simply. I was happy. I had a kingdom I loved, people who trusted me, work that mattered. And I had Lysander. We were going to change everything, to bring magic back to the world in ways that would benefit everyone. We were going to prove that love could transcend any boundary, break any rule. And instead, we proved that the gods will go to any length to maintain their control. His voice was bitter now, tinged with the anger of centuries. They couldn't bear the thought that mortals might achieve something they hadn't sanctioned, might love in ways they didn't approve of, The conversation stayed with her when she woke, coloring her thoughts throughout the day. She found herself looking at the world differently, seeing the small injustices and arbitrary rules that govern daily life. Why should love be limited by convention? Why should power be hoarded by those who had never earned it? Why should anyone accept limitations simply because they had always existed? These thoughts were dangerous, she knew. They were changing her, making her dissatisfied with a life that had seemed perfectly acceptable just days before. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the change was necessary, that she had been sleepwalking through her existence and was only now beginning to wake up. It was during her third week of carrying Thorne's presence that the first manifestation occurred. She was walking across campus, late for her afternoon literature class, when she felt a sudden surge of energy through her body. The world seemed to slow around her, colors becoming more vivid, sounds more distinct. She could hear individual conversations from across the quad, could see the patterns of light and shadow with perfect clarity. What's happening? She thought, alarmed by the sudden intensity of her perceptions. The bond is strengthening, Thorne replied, and she could hear the excitement in his voice. I can lend you my senses, my capabilities. Feel the power flowing through you. She did feel Ita warmth that started in her chest and spread through her entire body. She felt stronger, faster, more alive than she had ever been. When she looked at the world around her, she could see things that had been invisible before, the faint auras that surrounded every living thing. The lines of force that connected all things, the hidden currents of magic that flowed through the world like underground rivers. This is just the beginning, Thorne whispered in her mind. Wait until you see what we can do together. The manifestation lasted only a few minutes, but it left her shaken. She had felt truly powerful for the first time in her life, had glimpsed the vast possibilities that lay hidden beneath the surface of ordinary existence. The return to normal perception felt like being blinded. I want to feel that again, she found herself thinking, and immediately felt a stab of unease. The desire was too strong, too immediate. It reminded her of addiction, of the way people describe needing their next fix. Power is intoxicating, Thorne said, apparently sensing her concern. But you're strong enough to handle it. I can feel your will, your determination. You won't lose yourself. But even as he spoke, Aria wondered if he was right. The brief taste of enhanced perception had been incredible, but it had also felt necessary, as if her normal senses were inadequate, limited. She found herself looking forward to the next manifestation, counting the hours until she might feel that surge of power again. That night, her dreams were different. Instead of visiting Thorne's memories, she found herself in a space that belonged to neither of them, a vast library with shelves that stretched impossibly high, filled with books that glowed with their own inner light. The air hummed with potential, with knowledge waiting to be discovered. Where are we? She asked, running her fingers along the spine of a book that seemed to be written in liquid fire. This is a space between, Thorne replied, materializing beside her in his full physical form. In the dream, he looked exactly as he had in life, tall and elegant, with dark hair that fell to his shoulders and eyes that held the depth of storm clouds. His presence was commanding, magnetic, impossible to ignore. It's where our minds meet, where the boundaries between us blur. She turned to face him, struck by how real he seemed in this place. She could see the texture of his skin, the way his robes moved in the non-existent wind, the faint lines around his eyes that spoke of centuries of burden. When he smiled at her, she felt her heart skip a beat. You're beautiful, she said, then immediately felt heat rise in her cheeks. She hadn't meant to say it, hadn't even realized she was thinking it. As are you, he replied, his voice gentle. More beautiful than you know. He reached out as if to touch her face, then stopped, his hand hovering just inches from her skin. Even in the dream, even in this space between worlds, he was careful not to presume, not to take what wasn't freely given. I've been alone for so long, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I had forgotten what it was like to have someone to talk to share thoughts and dreams with. You've given me back something I thought I'd lost forever. What's that? She asked, the part of her already knew. Hope, he said simply. The possibility that things could be different, that I might someday be free to live again. She wanted to close the distance between them, to let him touch her, to explore the connection that was growing stronger with each passing day. But something held her baka awareness that this was a threshold, that once crossed, there would be no going back. What happens if you're freed? She asked instead. What happens to me? We would be partners, he said, his eyes never leaving hers, equals in all things. I would never try to control you, never try to diminish you. We would explore the world together, learn from each other, grow together. And if I wanted to leave? If I decided I preferred my old life? Then you could leave, he said, but she could hear the pain in his voice at the thought. I would never hold you against your will, but I hope you might find something with me that you can't find anywhere else. The conversation stayed with her when she woke, coloring her thoughts throughout the day. She found herself watching couples on campus, wondering if any of them shared the kind of connection she had with Thorne. The mental intimacy was unlike anything she had ever experienced. He knew her thoughts, her fears, her dreams, and accepted all of it without judgment. But was that enough? Could a relationship built on such unequal terms ever be truly balanced? He was ancient, powerful, experienced in ways she could barely imagine. What could she offer him in return? You underestimate yourself, Thorne said, apparently sensing her doubts. You have something I lost centuries ago: innocence, wonder, the ability to see the world with fresh eyes. You make me remember what it was like to be young, to believe that anything was possible. But what about what I want? She asked. What about my life, my plans, my future? What do you want? He asked in return. Really want, not what you think you should want. The question stopped her cold. She had always been good at following the expected path: good grades, good college, good career, good life. But what did she actually want? What would she choose if she could have anything? I want to matter, she said finally. I want to do something important, something that changes the world for the better. Then we want the same thing, Thorne replied. Because that's exactly what I intend to do. The manifestations began occurring more frequently, each one stronger than the last. Aria found herself able to perceive things that should have been impossible: the emotional states of people around her, the hidden connections between seemingly unrelated events, the flow of energy through the world itself. She could influence small things now, too, making traffic lights change at the right moment, finding perfect parking spaces, causing her professors to extend deadlines when she needed more time. It was intoxicating, and she found herself relying on these abilities more and more. Why struggle with ordinary human limitations when she could draw on Thorne's power? Why accept the arbitrary restrictions of normal life when she could bend reality to her will? But with power came responsibility, and with responsibility came danger. She began to notice that people were watching her, that her sudden streak of good luck and improved intuition hadn't gone unnoticed. Maya in particular seemed suspicious, asking pointed questions about Aria's recent changes. She knows something's different, Aria mentioned to Thorne one evening as she sat in her room, ostensibly doing homework but actually having a silent conversation with the presence in her mind. Of course she does, Thorne replied. You've changed dramatically in the past few weeks. You're more confident, more aware, more alive. People notice these things. Should I be worried? Not yet, he said, but she could hear the concern in his voice. But we should be careful. The last thing we want is to draw unwanted attention before I'm strong enough to manifest fully. How long until that happens? Not long now. The mirror continues to crack, and each manifestation weakens the barriers between our worlds. Soon, I'll be able to take physical form for short periods. And after that, I'll be free. The prospect should have excited her, but instead, she felt a strange mixture of anticipation and dread. Freedom for Thorne meant permanent change for her, meant stepping fully into a world of magic and power and consequences she couldn't predict. Was she ready for that? Did she have a choice? You always have a choice, Thorne said, responding to her unspoken thoughts. But choose soon, my dear. Events are moving faster than we anticipated. What do you mean? But before he could answer, her phone rang. Maya's name appeared on the screen, and something in the way it glowed made Aria's newly enhanced senses prickle with warning. Don't answer it, Thorne said urgently. Something's wrong. But Aria had already picked up the phone. Hello? Aria? Maya's voice was tight with fear. Are you okay? Please tell me you're okay. I'm fine, Aria said, sitting up straighter. What's wrong? You sound scared. I went back to the antique shop, Maya said in a rush. I know we agreed never to talk about what happened, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. About that mirror. So I went back, and Aria. The mirror is cracked. Not just cracked, it's breaking apart. And there's something inside it. Something that's trying to get out. Aria felt her blood turn to ice. What do you mean? Something's trying to get out. I mean, I could see shapes moving in the glass, could hear voices whispering. And the cracks, they're spreading. The whole mirror is going to shatter soon. And when it does... Maya's voice broke. When it does, whatever's inside is going to be free. The timeline has accelerated, Thorne said grimly. Maya's presence at the mirror, her fear and recognition, they've destabilized the spell. We have hours, not days. Maya, listen to me, Aria said, forcing her voice to remain calm. You need to get away from that place. Go home, lock your doors, and don't go back there. Do you understand? Aria, what aren't you telling me? What happened when you touched that mirror? Tell her nothing, Thorne warned. The fewer people who know, the better. But looking at her reflection in her bedroom mirror, Aria saw something that made her decision. Her eyes were no longer their normal brown, but a deep red that seemed to glow with inner fire. The change was subtle, but unmistakable. She was becoming something other than human. I'm sorry, she told Thorne silently. But she's my friend. She deserves to know. Aria, no, but she was already speaking. Maya, I need you to listen to me very carefully. When I touched that mirror, something happened. Something that connected me to whatever's inside it. And now, I think it's trying to get out. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Maya said, in a voice barely above a whisper, Are you saying you're possessed? I'm saying I'm not entirely alone in my head anymore, Aria replied. And if that mirror breaks, if the thing inside gets free, I don't know what will happen. This is a mistake, Thorne said, his mental voice sharp with anger. You're endangering everything. She's my friend, Aria replied. I won't let her walk into danger blind. And what about our plans? What about your freedom? Your power? What about my humanity? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. For the first time since their connection began, Aria felt truly separate from Thorne, truly aware of the distance between what he wanted and what she was willing to sacrifice. Aria? Maya's voice brought her back to the present. Are you still there? I'm here, she said. Maya, I need you to promise me something. Promise me you won't go back to that shop. Promise me you'll stay away until this is over. What if I can't? What if whatever's in that mirror comes looking for you? The question chilled her because she knew Maya was right. If Thorne was freed, if he took physical form in the world, he would need a way to sustain himself. And the most logical source of power would be the people who had witnessed his emergence, who had knowledge of what he truly was. Is that true? She asked him directly. Would you hurt my friends? I would do what I had to do to survive, he replied. And for the first time, she heard something cold and calculating in his voice. I've waited too long for freedom to let mortal concerns stand in my way. They're not just mortal concerns, she said, her mental voice hard with anger. They're people. They're my friends. And I am your partner, he replied. Your other half. Surely I matter more than acquaintances you've known for a few years. The casual dismissal of her friendship stung, but more than that, it revealed something about Thorne that she had been trying to ignore. He was ancient, powerful, and fundamentally inhuman. His perspective was shaped by centuries of solitude, and a worldview that placed magical power above human connections. You're right, she said finally. You do matter more. But not in the way you think. What do you mean? I mean that what I feel for you, what we have together, it's real. It's deeper than friendship, deeper than ordinary love. But it's also built on a foundation of mutual respect and care. If you would hurt innocent people just to secure your freedom, then maybe you're not the man I thought you were. The silence that followed her words was deafening. She could feel Thorne's presence in her mind, could sense his shock and anger and something that might have been hurt. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. You don't understand what it's like, he said. You don't know what it's like to be trapped, to be powerless, to watch the world change around you while you can do nothing. I've been patient, I've been kind, I've been everything you wanted me to be. But I won't be denied my freedom. Not now, not when I'm so close. I'm not trying to deny you anything, Aria replied. I'm trying to make sure that when you're free, you're still someone I can love. The word hung between them, charged with meaning. She hadn't meant to say it, hadn't even realized she was thinking it. But now that it was out there, she couldn't take it back. She did love him, in a way that was complicated and dangerous and completely consuming. Love, he repeated, and she could hear the wonder in his voice. Do you mean that? I mean it, she said. But love isn't just about wanting someone. It's about accepting them, supporting them, helping them become the best version of themselves. And if you become someone who hurts innocent people, then you're not becoming better. You're becoming the monster the gods thought you were. The words struck him like a physical blow. She could feel his recoil, his pain, his desperate need to deny what she was saying. But she could also feel the truth of it sinking in, the way it resonated with doubts he had been carrying for centuries. I am not a monster, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I am a king, a ruler, a man who loved too deeply and paid the price. Then prove it, she said. Show me that the man I've fallen in love with is still there, still capable of choosing compassion over convenience. The phone was still pressed to her ear, and she suddenly realized that Maya was saying something, her voice high with panic. Aria? Aria, are you listening? The minaret's doing something. The cracks are spreading faster, and there's light coming from inside it. Bright red light, like fire. The manifestation is accelerating, Thorne said, his attention suddenly focused on the crisis at hand. The emotional intensity of our conversation, the depth of connection we've just acknowledged, it's feeding the spell's breakdown. What does that mean? Aria asked, though she was afraid she already knew. It means I'm about to break free whether we're ready or not. Maya, get out of there, Aria said into the phone, jumping to her feet. Get out of the building, get away from the mirror, get somewhere safe. I can't, Maya said, her voice shaking. The dorit's stuck. It won't open. And the mirror, it's pulling me toward it. I can feel it in my head, whispering things, promising things. It's calling to her, Thorne said grimly. The mirror recognizes her as a witness, someone who has power over the narrative of my freedom. It wants to bind her to the spell, to use her as an anchor. Can you stop it? Not from here. But you can. How? By letting me manifest fully. By dropping the barriers between us and allowing me to take physical form. I can save your friend, but only if you trust me completely. Aria felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Trust him completely, that meant giving up the last vestiges of her independent existence, meant allowing him to use her body as a vessel for his consciousness. It meant becoming something new, something that was neither fully human nor fully whatever he was. If I do this, she said, will I still be me? You will be yourself, he said. But you will also be more than yourself. We will be partners in the truest sense, sharing everything: thoughts, memories, power, purpose. And if I don't? Then Maya dies, and I emerge anyway, but without the control that comes from willing partnership. I will be raw power without tempering wisdom, ancient hunger without modern compassion. It wasn't really a choice at all. She could hear Maya's voice growing weaker, could hear the terror in her friend's words as the mirror's influence grew stronger. Whatever the cost to herself, she couldn't let Maya pay the price for her own curiosity. Do it, she said. I trust you. The change was immediate and overwhelming. Power rushed through her body like liquid fire, transforming every cell, every nerve, every thought. She felt herself expanding, becoming more than she had ever been, while simultaneously feeling Thorne's presence settling into her consciousness like a key finding its lock. But she was still herself. She could feel her own thoughts, her own emotions, her own will. The integration was seamless, natural, as if they had always been meant to share this existence. Are you all right? Thorne asked, his voice now coming from within her own mind, rather than from some distant mental space. I'm fine, she said, and was surprised to find that she meant it. I feel complete. As do I, he replied, and she could feel his wonder, his joy, his profound relief at finally being free. Now, let's save your friend. The journey to the antique shop took only minutes, but it felt like hours. Aria moved through the streets with inhuman speed and grace, her enhanced senses allowing her to navigate the familiar paths with perfect precision. She could feel the mirror's influence growing stronger as she approached, could sense the barrier between worlds growing thinner with each passing second. The shop was dark when she arrived, but her enhanced vision let her see everything clearly. The door stood open, hanging off its hinges as if something had torn it apart from the inside. Beyond it, the interior of the shop glowed with a pulsing red light that seemed to emanate from the very walls. Maya stood in the back corner, her body rigid with terror, her eyes fixed on the blood mirror that dominated the space. The mirror's surface was a web of cracks now, each fracture glowing with the same red light. Through the gaps, Aria could see glimpses of the shadow realm that had been Thorne's prison-twisted spires, floating islands, creatures of living darkness that pressed against the barriers between worlds. The mirror is about to shatter completely, Thorne said. When it does, the portal will open fully. We need to stabilize it before that happens. How? By giving it what it wants: a willing conduit, someone who can serve as an anchor between the realms. But it has to be someone who touches the mirror by choice, not by compulsion. Aria understood. Maya was being drawn to the mirror against her will, but if Aria could reach it first, could place her hand on its surface voluntarily, she might be able to control the opening of the portal. She moved through the shop carefully, avoiding the debris and overturned furniture. The mirror's influence was strong here, filling the air with whispers and promises, but Thorne's presence in her mind provided a buffer against its effects. Maya, she called out, her voice cutting through the supernatural silence. Maya, can you hear me? Her friend's head turned slowly, as if she were moving through thick honey. When their eyes met, Aria saw recognition flicker in Maya's gaze, followed by a mixture of relief and terror. Aria, Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. I can't move. It won't let me move. The mirror has her locked in place, Thorne explained. She's fighting it, but she's not strong enough to break free on her own. Then we break her free, Aria said grimly. She reached out with her enhanced senses, feeling for the threads of power that connected Maya to the mirror. They were there, barely visible lines of red energy that wrapped around her friend like chains. With careful precision, Aria began to sever those connections, drawing on both her own will and Thorne's ancient knowledge of magical bindings. The mirror reacted violently to her interference. The cracks spread faster, and the red light grew brighter. Through the gaps in the glass she could see shapes moving, not the elegant courtiers of Thorne's memories, but something else entirely. Something hungry and ancient and barely contained. Those aren't my subjects, Thorne said, his mental voice tight with alarm. Something else has been using my prison. Something that was bound there long before I was. What kind of something? The kind that feeds on fear and despair and the spaces between worlds. The kind that the gods locked away for good reason. The implications hit her like a physical blow. The mirror wasn't just Thorne's prison, it was a nexus. A place where multiple bindings intersected. Freeing him meant potentially releasing other, far more dangerous entities. You knew, she said, her mental voice sharp with accusation. You knew this might happen. I suspected, he admitted. But I hoped that love would be enough to overcome the darkness. And if it's not, then we face whatever comes together. The mirror gave a sound like breaking glass, and suddenly Maya was free. She stumbled forward, her legs shaking, her eyes wide with terror. Aria, what is this place? What's happening? It's complicated, Aria said, moving to her friend's side. But right now, we need to get you out of here. It's too late for that, Thorne said grimly. The portal is opening. We need to make a choice street to reseal it and risk trapping me again, or let it open fully and deal with whatever comes through. There has to be another option. There is, he said quietly. But you won't like it. Tell me. I can merge fully with the mirror, become its guardian rather than its prisoner. I can control what passes through and what doesn't. But it would mean staying bound to this place, staying trapped, for as long as the mirror exists. No, Aria said immediately. I won't let you sacrifice yourself. Not after everything we've been through. It wouldn't be a sacrifice, he said gently. It would be a choice. My choice, made freely, to protect the world I love and the woman I love. There has to be another way. But even as she spoke, she could see that time was running out. The mirror's surface was more cracked than glass now, and the things pressing against it from the other side were growing stronger. Maya was clinging to her arm, asking questions she couldn't answer, while the very air around them began to warp and twist. I have an idea, she said suddenly, but it's risky. Tell me, what if we don't fight the mirror? What if we use it? You said it was meant to be a bridge between worlds, a way to bring magic back to the world. What if that's exactly what we do? I don't understand. Instead of trying to contain the darkness, we flood it with light. We open the portal not just to your shadow realm, but to every realm, every world, every possibility. We bring so much magic through that the darkness gets washed away in the tide. That's incredibly dangerous, Thorne said after a moment. Opening the barriers between all worlds simultaneously could destabilize reality itself. But it could also save it, Aria pointed out. And it would give you the freedom you've been seeking. True freedom, not just escape from one prison to another. And what about you? What about your world, your life, your future? My future is with you, she said simply, wherever that leads. The mirror gave another resounding crack, and suddenly they were out of time. The glass began to fall away in sheets, revealing the portal beyond. Through it, Aria could see the shadow realm in all its terrible glory, a place of beauty and horror, of wonders and nightmares existing side by side. Do it, she said, reaching out to place her hand on the mirror's frame. Open the doors. All of them. Together, Thorne said, and she felt his consciousness merge more fully with hers than ever before. Power rushed through them both, ancient and overwhelming, and absolutely transcendent. The mirror's surface didn't just crack it, exploded outward in a shower of red light that illuminated the entire shop. But instead of releasing the darkness within, the explosion became a doorway, a gateway that expanded beyond the confines of the mirror to encompass the entire back wall of the shop. Through it, Aria could see not just the shadow realm, but dozens of other worlds' realms of pure light and singing crystal, underwater kingdoms populated by beings of living coral. Vast libraries where knowledge took physical form and prowled the shelves like sentient creatures. The barriers between worlds weren't just falling, they were dissolving entirely, creating a nexus where all realities intersected. "It's working," Thorne said, his voice filled with wonder. "The darkness is being pushed back by the sheer diversity of what's coming through." But even as he spoke, Aria could see that the process was far from over. The portal was stable now, but it was also growing. Soon, it would expand beyond the shop, beyond the block, beyond the city. The entire world would be transformed, flooded with magic and possibility and creatures from 1,000 different realms. "Is this what you wanted?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "This is what I dreamed of," he replied. "A world where magic is commonplace, where the boundaries between the possible and impossible don't exist. A world where love can transcend any barrier. And the people who live here? The ones who didn't choose this? They'll adapt," he said, though she could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "Humans always do. And they'll be richer for it, able to experience wonders they never could have imagined." Maya tugged on her arm, breaking her concentration. "Aria, what is that? What's happening to the mirror?" Aria looked at her friend, seeing the fear and confusion in her eyes. Maya was a good person, someone who had lived a normal life and deserved to continue living it. But that choice was being taken away from her, from everyone in the world, by Aria's decision to trust Thorne completely. "I can stop it," she realized suddenly. "I can close the portal, seal the barriers, put everything back the way it was. But that would mean trapping me again," Thorne said. "Condemning me to another 1,000 years of solitude." "Not necessarily," she said. What if I came with you? What if we went through the portal together, left this world behind for the Shadow Realm? You would do that? Give up everything you've ever known? For you?" "Yes." The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Through their merged consciousness, she could feel Thorne's struggle, his desire for freedom warring with his love for her. He wanted to be free, but he also wanted her to be happy. And deep down, he knew that asking her to abandon her world, her friends, her entire life, was a form of cruelty. "There is another way," he said finally. "But it requires a sacrifice from both of us." "What kind of sacrifice?" "I stay here, in this world, but I give up my full power. I become more human, more limited, more like you. In exchange, you keep some of the magic, some of the enhanced abilities, but you remain fundamentally yourself. And the portal? We close it. We seal the barriers between worlds, but gently, gradually, so that some magic remains. Enough to make life more interesting, more wonderful, but not enough to destabilize reality. It was a compromise, a middle path that would give them both something while requiring them both to sacrifice something else. Thorne would have his freedom, but not his full power. Aria would have her world, but forever changed by magic's presence. "Maya," she said aloud, turning to her friend, "I need you to do something for me. I need you to leave this place, go home, and forget everything you've seen here." "I can't just forget," Maya protested. "This is impossible. It's incredible. It's dangerous," Aria interrupted. "Not just for you, but for everyone. The less you know, the safer you'll be." "Use the magic," Thorne suggested. "You can make her forget. Make this entire experience seem like a dream." "No," Aria said firmly. "I won't violate her mind. If she chooses to forget, that's her decision. But I won't make it for her. Then you're asking her to carry a terrible burden," he pointed out. "The knowledge of what's really possible, of what exists beyond the ordinary world." "I'm trusting her to be strong enough to handle it," Aria replied. "The same way you trusted me." Maya looked between them, her expression shifting from confusion to something approaching understanding. "You're not entirely human anymore, are you?" she said quietly. "No," Aria admitted. "I'm not. But I'm still me. I'm still your friend. And him? Maya asked, though there was no one else visible in the shop. The voice you've been talking to? He's complicated, Aria said. But he's not evil. He's just been alone for a very long time. Maya nodded slowly, as if she were processing information that her rational mind couldn't quite accept. Will I see you again? Or are you going to disappear into whatever world is on the other side of that portal? You'll see me, Aria said, and meant it. I'm not going anywhere. But things are going to be different now. Magic is real, and it's going to be part of the world whether we want it to be or not. Are you ready? Thorne asked, his mental voice gentle but urgent. The portal is still growing. We need to act soon. I'm ready, she said, then turned to Maya. Go, please, trust me, and go. Maya hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She squeezed Aria's hand once, hard, then turned and walked out of the shop. The door swung shut behind her with a sound like finality. Now, Thorne said, and Aria felt his consciousness merge with hers more completely than ever before. Together, they reached out to the portal, to the chaotic swirl of magic and possibility that threatened to consume the world. Instead of trying to stop it, they guided it, shaped it, channeled it into forms that the world could accommodate. The flood of magic became a trickle, then a stream, then a gentle rain that would nourish rather than overwhelm. The portal began to shrink, its edges drawing inward as the barriers between worlds slowly reasserted themselves. But it didn't disappear entirely, it remained, a doorway between realms that could be used carefully, judiciously, by those who understood its power. When the transformation was complete, Aria found herself standing in a shop that looked almost normal. The mirror was still there, but it was whole now, its surface reflecting only ordinary light. The magical artifacts were still present, but they seemed more like curiosities than relics of power. And beside her, for the first time in physical form, stood Thorne. He was exactly as she had seen him in dreams, tall and elegant, with dark hair and storm-gray eyes. But there was something more human about him now, something accessible and real. When he smiled at her, she could see the man behind the power, the person who had loved and lost and found hope again. Hello, he said, his voice carrying a slight accent she hadn't noticed in their mental conversations. I'm Thorne. It's a pleasure to finally meet you properly. Hello, she replied, feeling suddenly shy despite their intimate mental connection. I'm Aria. I know, he said, his smile widening. I know you very well indeed. They stood there for a moment, taking in the reality of his physical presence. He was solid, real, warm when she reached out to touch his hand. The connection between their minds was still there, but it was gentler now, more like a shared understanding than a merger of consciousness. What happens now? She asked. Now we figure out how to live in this world, he said. Together, we explore what it means to be human and magical, mortal and eternal, individual and connected. And the magic, the portal, the things that might come through, we'll handle them as they come, he said. We'll be guardians, guides, protectors. We'll help the world adapt to magic's presence while making sure it doesn't become something to fear. Is that what you want? She asked, falling back into their mental communication out of habit. It's what I choose, he replied. For the first time in centuries, I'm making a choice based on love, rather than duty, or anger, or desperation. And I choose you. I choose this world. I choose the possibility of building something new together. They left the shop hand in hand, stepping out into a world that looked the same, but felt fundamentally different. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and somewhere in the distance, Aria could hear the sound of laughter carried on a wind that smelled of flowers and rain and infinite possibility. Do you regret it? Thorne asked as they walked. Giving up your normal life for something unknown? I never had a normal life, she replied. I was always waiting for something to begin, always feeling like I was meant for more than what I had. Now I know what that something was. And what was it? You, she said simply. It was you. The weeks that followed were a period of adjustment and discovery. Thorne had to learn how to exist in the modern world, how to navigate a society that had changed beyond recognition during his imprisonment. Aria had to learn how to control her enhanced abilities, how to use magic responsibly, how to balance her human nature with the divine power that now flowed through her veins. They found a small apartment near the university, in a building that had been constructed on a convergence of ley lines. The location made it easier for them to monitor magical activity in the area, to respond quickly when supernatural problems arose. And there were creatures from other realms that had slipped through during the portal's opening, magical artifacts that had been awakened by the surge of power, people who had been touched by magic and didn't know how to control it. But there were also wonders. Children who could speak to animals, artists whose paintings came to life, musicians whose songs could heal hearts and mend broken bones. The world was becoming more vibrant, more alive, more full of possibility than it had ever been. Maya, true to her word, kept their secret. She checked in on Aria regularly, ostensibly to make sure her friend was adjusting well to her new relationship, but actually to monitor the magical situation. She had a talent for spotting supernatural problems before they became crises, and she often served as an early warning system for the couple. "You're happy," she observed one evening as they sat in a coffee shop near campus. "Really, genuinely happy. I don't think I've ever seen you like this before." "I am happy," Aria confirmed. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "And he makes you happy? This mysterious boyfriend who appeared out of nowhere?" Aria smiled, glancing across the shop to where Thorne was reading a book on modern history. He looked up as if sensing her attention, and the smile he gave her was warm and intimate and full of shared understanding. "He makes me complete," she said. "It's like I was missing a piece of myself my whole life, and now I found it." "Just promise me you'll be careful," Maya said. "I know you think you can handle anything, but some things are bigger than individual people. Some things can destroy everything if they're not handled right." "She's worried about us," Thorne observed, having caught the tail end of the conversation through their mental link. "She thinks we're in over our heads." "Are we?" Aria asked. "Probably," he admitted. "But we're in over our heads together. And sometimes, that's enough." Their first real test came 3 months after the portal's opening. A creature from the Shadow Realm had slipped through during the chaos, a being of pure hunger and malevolence that fed on fear and despair. It had been hiding in the city's sewer system, growing stronger by feeding on the negative emotions of the people above. The first sign of its presence was a rash of suicides in the downtown area. Then came the inexplicable accidents, the sudden outbreaks of violence, the wave of depression that seemed to settle over entire neighborhoods like a fog. By the time Aria and Thorne realized what they were dealing with, the creature had grown strong enough to manifest physically. "It's one of the Devourers," Thorne explained as they prepared to confront it. "Ancient beings that existed before the gods, before the ordered universe. They're not evil in the way humans understand evil, they're simply hungry, and they consume anything that contains emotional energy. How do we fight something like that?" "With light," he said. "With love. With everything that stands in opposition to despair." The battle took place in the tunnels beneath the city, in a space that existed partially in the physical world and partially in the realm of pure emotion. The Devourer was a thing of shifting shadows and gnashing teeth, a creature that seemed to be made of the absence of hope itself. Aria had never fought anything like it before. Her magic, still new and unpredictable, flared wildly as she tried to attack the creature. But every spell she cast seemed to feed it, every burst of power only making it stronger. "You're fighting it wrong," Thorne said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. "You can't defeat despair with force. You can only defeat it with its opposite." "How?" "Remember why you touched the mirror," he said. "Remember what you were looking for. Remember what you found." And suddenly, she understood. The Devourer fed on negative emotions, but it was vulnerable to positive ones. Instead of attacking it with destructive magic, She needed to attack it with hope, with love, with the joy she had found in her connection to Thorne. She reached out with her mind, not to strike the creature but to surround it with memories of happiness the first time she had heard Thorne's voice. The moment she had realized she loved him, the countless hours they had spent learning about each other and building something beautiful together. The devourer recoiled as if burned, its form wavering as it encountered emotions it couldn't consume. It tried to flee, but Aria and Thorne were ready for it. Together they wove a net of positive energy around the creature, trapping it in a web of hope and love and possibility. "What do we do with it now?" Aria asked as the devourer writhed in their magical bonds. "We don't destroy it," Thorne said. "We transform it. We teach it to feed on something other than despair." "Is that possible?" "Everything is possible," he replied. "That's what love teaches us." The transformation took hours, but when it was complete, the devourer had become something else entirely, a creature of living light that fed on joy rather than sorrow, that created hope rather than consuming it. It disappeared into the city's emotional landscape, but its influence would be felt for years to come in the sudden lifting of depression, in the unexpected moments of happiness, in the way people began to smile at strangers on the street. "We did it," Aria said, exhausted but exhilarated. "We actually did it." "We did," Thorne agreed. "And we'll do it again, as many times as necessary. This is our purpose now, to be guardians of the balance between worlds, protectors of the innocent, teachers of those who would use magic wisely." "Is this what you imagined?" she asked. "When you dreamed of being free?" "No," he said honestly. "This is better. This is meaningful in a way that simple freedom never could be. I'm not just free, I'm free to choose how to use that freedom. And I choose to use it to build something beautiful with you." They emerged from the tunnels to find the city transformed. The wave of depression that had gripped the downtown area was gone, replaced by an inexplicable sense of optimism. People were smiling, laughing, connecting with each other in ways they hadn't in months. The creature's transformation had created a ripple effect, spreading hope through the entire population. "Look at what we've done," Aria said, surveying the scene. "Look at what we've accomplished." "This is just the beginning," Thorne replied. "There will be other challenges, other creatures, other problems to solve. But we'll face them together." Together, she agreed. And the word felt like a promise, a vow, a commitment to a future that stretched out before them like an endless road. The years that followed were filled with challenges and adventures, with moments of triumph and periods of doubt. They faced creatures from other realms, helped newly awakened magic users learn to control their abilities, and worked to build bridges between the magical and mundane worlds. Aria finished her degree, but instead of pursuing a traditional career, she opened a consulting firm that specialized in supernatural problems. Thorne, meanwhile, became a teacher, sharing his knowledge of magic and history with those who needed it. Together, they built a reputation as the people to call when the impossible became problematic. They were not perfect. They made mistakes, suffered setbacks, faced moments when the weight of their responsibilities seemed too great to bear. But they faced everything together, drawing strength from their connection and wisdom from their love. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't touched the mirror?" Thorne asked one evening as they sat on the roof of their apartment building, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "Sometimes," Aria admitted. "But I don't regret it. Even knowing what I know now, even understanding the price we've both paid, I would make the same choice." "And what price is that?" "We can never be entirely normal," she said. "We can never pretend that magic doesn't exist, that we don't have responsibilities to something larger than ourselves. We can never just be ordinary people living ordinary lives. Would you want that?" he asked. "To be ordinary?" "No," she said without hesitation. "I would want to be exactly who I am, with exactly the person I'm with, facing exactly the challenges we face. This is the life I was meant to live." "And I am the person you were meant to be with?" You are the person I chose to be with, she corrected. And I choose you again, every day, every hour, every moment. He took her hand, intertwining their fingers, and she felt the familiar warmth of their connection pulse between them. In the 5 years since their first meeting, they had built something extraordinary, not just a relationship, but a partnership that transcended the boundaries between human and magical, mortal and eternal. There's something I want to ask you, he said, his mental voice suddenly nervous. Something I've been thinking about for a while now. What is it? Instead of answering with words, he stood up and walked to the edge of the roof, where a small garden grew in carefully tended containers. He knelt beside a plant that Aria had never seen before, something with silver leaves and flowers that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight. I grew this for you, he said, plucking one of the flowers. It's from my home realm, a plant that blooms only when it's in the presence of true love. The flower, once picked, will last forever, a symbol of commitment but transcends time itself. He walked back to her, the flower glowing softly in his hands. When he knelt beside her, she could see tears glistening in his eyes. Aria Chen, he said, his voice formal but warm with emotion. Will you bind yourself to me as I have bound myself to you? Will you be my partner in all things, my equal in all endeavors, my love for all time? Is that a proposal? She asked, though she already knew the answer. It's a promise, he said. A vow to stand together against whatever comes, to support each other through whatever challenges we face, to build something beautiful and lasting and true. She looked at the flower in his hands, then at his face, then at the city spread out below them. This was her world now, a place where magic and reality intertwined, where love could literally reshape the fabric of existence, where two people from different worlds could build a life together that was richer and more meaningful than anything either could have achieved alone. Yes, she said, taking the flower from his hands. Yes, I'll bind myself to you. I'll be your partner, your equal, your love for all time. The flower pulsed with light as she touched it, and she felt something shift in the very essence of her being. The connection between them, already strong, became something more, a bond that would endure beyond death, beyond time, beyond the boundaries of worlds. Now we are truly one, Thorne said, his voice filled with wonder. Not in the sense of losing our individuality, but in the sense of choosing to share everything, our joys and sorrows, our triumphs and failures, our hopes and fears. What happens now? She asked, though she was no longer afraid of the answer. Now we live, he said simply. We explore what it means to be bound to each other, to be partners in the truest sense. We face whatever challenges come our way, solve whatever problems arise, protect whatever needs protecting. And if we're not strong enough, if we encounter something we can't handle, then we face it together, he said. And we remember that love is the most powerful force in any universe. It can break curses, open portals, transform monsters into angels. It can do anything, as long as we believe in it. I believe, she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. So do I, he replied. So do I. They sat on the roof as the sun set and the stars came out, talking about their future and the adventures that awaited them. The city spread out below them, a place where magic and mundane reality coexisted in increasingly comfortable harmony. In the distance, they could see the lights of the university, where a new generation of students was learning to live in a world where the impossible was merely improbable. Look at what we've built, Aria said, gesturing at the scene before them. Look at what we've accomplished. We've built a world where love can transcend any boundary, Thorne replied, where two people from different realms can find each other and create something beautiful together, where magic serves not to divide but to unite, not to destroy but to transform. And we're just getting started, she said, smiling at the thought of all the adventures that lay ahead. Just getting started, he agreed. We have forever, after all. Forever, she repeated, and the word felt like a promise, A gift. A blessing beyond anything she had ever dared to dream. The stars wheeled overhead, ancient and eternal, witnesses to a love that had transcended death, imprisonment, and the very laws of reality itself. And as Aria and Thorne sat together on their rooftop, bound by magic and choice and the unbreakable commitment they had made to each other, they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it as they had faced everything else, together. The crystalline flower in Aria's hands pulsed with a gentle light, its glow synchronizing with their heartbeats, a visible reminder of the bond they had forged. In the distance, the city hummed with life and magic, a testament to what could be accomplished when love conquered fear, when hope triumphed over despair, when two souls found their perfect match across the vast expanse of space and quote. Time. What are you thinking about? Thorne asked, sensing the shift in her mood. I'm thinking about that day in the antique shop, she replied. About how terrified I was when I first heard your voice, how sure I was that I was losing my mind. And now? Now I know that I wasn't losing my mind at all. I was finding my purpose. I was discovering who I was always meant to be. And who is that? Your partner, she said simply. Your equal. Your love. The other half of your soul. As you are mine, he replied, his mental voice warm with emotion. My salvation, my redemption, my reason for believing that love can conquer anything. They fell into comfortable silence, content to sit together and watch the world they had helped create. Below them, the city sparkled with both electric lights and magical auroras, a perfect fusion of the mundane and the miraculous. In the years since the portal's opening, humanity had adapted to magic's presence with remarkable resilience, learning to live alongside wonders that previous generations would have considered impossible. There were still challenges, of course. There always would be. But with each problem they solved, each crisis they averted, each moment of joy they created, the world became a little brighter, a little more hopeful, a little more alive with possibility. Do you think we'll ever run out of adventures? Aria asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Not as long as there are worlds to explore, people to help, and magic to understand, Thorne replied. Not as long as there are those who need protection and guidance. Not as long as love exists in the universe. Good, she said, leaning against his shoulder, because I'm not ready to settle down into a quiet life just yet. Nor am I, he said, wrapping his arm around her. We have eternity to be domestic. For now, let's focus on being extraordinary. A shooting star streaked across the sky above them, and without needing to discuss it, they both made the same wish for the strength to face whatever came next, for the wisdom to use their power responsibly, and for the love between them to continue growing stronger with each passing day. The star disappeared into the darkness, but its light seemed to linger, as if the universe itself was acknowledging their commitment to each other and to the greater good. In that moment, Aria felt a profound sense of rightness, of being exactly where she belonged, with exactly the person she was meant to be with. I love you, she said, the words carrying the weight of everything they had been through together, everything they had built, everything they planned to become. And I love you, he replied. For all time, across all worlds, beyond all boundaries. The night wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of flowers and rain and infinite possibility. Somewhere in the distance, a nightingale began to sing, its melody weaving through the air like a blessing, like a promise, like the echo of ancient magic awakening in a world ready to embrace wonder once again. Aria and Thorne sat together on their rooftop, two souls who had found each other across the vast expanse of reality, two hearts that had chosen to beat in perfect synchrony, two minds that had discovered the true meaning of unity without loss of self. They had touched the blood mirror and been bound to each other by forces beyond their understanding, but they had also chosen that binding, had made it their own, had transformed it from a curse into the greatest blessing either had ever known. The future stretched out before them, infinite and uncertain and full of promise. They would face it together, as partners, as equals, as two halves of a love story that had already rewritten the laws of magic and would continue to reshape the world for generations to come. Ready for whatever comes next? Thorne asked, though he already knew the answer. With you? Aria replied, her voice soft but certain. I'm ready for anything. Then let's go change the world, he said, standing and offering her his hand. Let's go save it, she corrected, taking his hand and rising to stand beside him. Let's go love it into something better than it was before, he said. And in his voice was all the hope and determination and boundless affection that had carried them through their darkest moments and brought them to this perfect instant of infinite possibility. Hand in hand, bound by magic and choice and the unbreakable power of true love, they stepped off the rooftop and into their future, ready to face whatever adventures awaited them in a world where anything was possible and love truly could conquer all. The crystalline flower in Aria's free hand pulsed one final time, its light merging with the stars above and the magical auroras below. A symbol of the bond that connected them not just to each other but to all the beauty and wonder and hope that existed in the universe. They had touched the blood mirror and found their destiny. They had been bound to each other and discovered their freedom. They had faced the impossible and made it possible through the simple, extraordinary power of loving without limits. And as they disappeared into the night, their laughter echoing through the magical city they had helped create, the world itself seemed to sigh with contentment, knowing that it was in good hands, protected by guardians who understood that the greatest magic of all was the choice to stand together against the darkness and fight for the light. The blood mirror, in its shop on Elm Street, reflected only ordinary images now, its surface clear and calm. But sometimes, late at night when the moon was dark and the stars were bright, observers might catch a glimpse of something extraordinary in its depths, two figures walking hand in hand through realms of shadow and light, their love burning like a beacon across all the worlds that were, and are, and ever could be. Their story had begun with a dare and a touch of curiosity. It had continued with trust, sacrifice, and the courage to choose love over fear. And it would go on, through all the ages to come, a testament to the truth that some bonds are stronger than death, some love more powerful than magic, and some choices capable of reshaping reality itself. In the end, Aria Chen had touched the blood mirror and become bound to a forgotten king. But more than that, she had discovered that she was never forgotten at all. She was simply waiting in one world for her other half to call to her from another. And when that call came, when that choice was offered, when that love was recognized for what it truly was, she had answered without hesitation, stepping into a story that would echo through eternity. The mirror held their reflections for just a moment longer, showing them as they were two souls united, two hearts beating as one, two lives intertwined in a dance that would last forever. Then the glass went dark, and the shop fell silent, and the world continued its ancient rotation, carrying within it the secret of a love that had conquered time itself. But in the spaces between sleeping and waking, in the moments when magic touches the mundane world with gentle fingers, sometimes people would dream of a woman with eyes like starlight, and a man with a voice like distant thunder, walking together through realms of infinite possibility, their love a light that could never be extinguished. Their bond a promise that true connection could transcend any barrier the universe might place between two hearts meant to be one. And in those dreams, the dreamers would wake with tears of joy on their faces and hope renewed in their hearts, knowing without understanding how they knew that somewhere, somehow, love had found a way to win. The blood mirror had been touched, the forgotten king had been remembered, and two souls had chosen each other across all the vastness of space and time. The story was complete, but it was also just beginning. For love stories never truly end, they simply transform, becoming legends, becoming inspiration, becoming proof that in a universe full of wonders and terrors and impossible things, the most impossible thing of all is that love exists, endures, and ultimately triumphs over everything that would stand against it. Aria and Thorne's tale would be told for generations, a modern fairy tale about the power of choice, the magic of connection, and the truth that some mirrors reflect not just what is, but what could be if only someone is brave enough to reach out and touch the glass. 7 years had passed since that first touch, since that moment when curiosity became destiny and a dare became the foundation of forever. The world had settled into its new reality with surprising grace, though not without growing pains that required constant attention from those who understood both sides of the magical equation. Aria stood in the main hall of the Institute for Interdimensional Studies, a facility she and Thorne had established 3 years prior in a converted cathedral on the outskirts of the city. The Gothic architecture provided the perfect atmosphere for serious magical education, while the modern addition's laboratories, libraries, and comfortable living quarters made it a practical place for learning, and research. Today's challenge was unlike anything they had faced before. A tear had appeared in the fabric of reality itself, not the controlled portal they had created, but a wild rupture that threatened to destabilize the careful balance they had worked so hard to maintain. Through it, glimpses of a dying world flickered, a realm where magic had been corrupted, where the very elements have turned against their inhabitants. The readings are getting worse. Dr. Aria Chen, no relation to Aria, despite the shared surname reported from her position at the monitoring station. She was one of their most gifted students, a physicist who had embraced magic with the same rigor she had once applied to quantum mechanics. The dimensional stress is increasing exponentially. If this continues, we're looking at cascade failures across multiple reality layers. Thorne studied the data with the intensity of someone who had lived through the collapse of worlds before. His human form moved with the unconscious grace of royalty, but his eyes held depths that spoke of experiences no mortal should possess. "This isn't random," he said finally. "Someone is forcing this tear open from the other side. Can you tell who?" Aria asked, though she was already preparing herself for the answer she didn't want to hear. "The magical signature is familiar," he said grimly. "It's Valdris the Corruptor. He was one of my former subjects, a court mage who turned to forbidden practices after my imprisonment. If he's still alive after all these centuries, then he's found a way to sustain himself on corrupted magic," Aria finished. "And now he's trying to escape his dying world by forcing his way into ours." The implications were staggering. Valdris had been powerful enough to challenge Thorne's authority when both were at full strength. If he had spent centuries perfecting dark magic while his world died around him, there was no telling what he might be capable of now. "We need to seal the tear," Sarah said, her voice tight with professional concern. "Whatever the cost." "Sealing it won't solve the problem," Thorne replied. "Valdris will simply tear it open again, and each time he does, the damage to the dimensional barriers will be more severe. Eventually, the entire structure of reality in this region could collapse." "Then what do you suggest?" "And?" Aria asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "We go through," he said simply. "We confront Valdris in his own realm, on his own terms. We end this before it can spread to other worlds." "That's suicide," Sarah protested. "If his world is dying, if the magic there is corrupted, you could be walking into a trap that would destroy you both." "Perhaps," Thorne acknowledged. "But the alternative is allowing him to corrupt our world, to turn everything we've built into another wasteland of twisted magic and suffering. That's not acceptable." Aria felt the familiar weight of impossible choices settling on her shoulders. In the 7 years since their binding, they had faced many challenges, but none quite like this. The stakes had never been higher, the danger never more personal. "Are you sure about this?" she asked through their mental link, wanting his honest assessment rather than his public confidence. "No," he replied with characteristic honesty. "But uncertainty has never stopped us before, and if we don't act, millions of innocent people will pay the price for our caution." "Then we go," she said, her mental voice steady despite her fears. "But we go prepared." The next hour was a whirlwind of preparation. They gathered supplies that would be useful in a world where the natural order had been corrupted: protective wards, purification crystals, weapons forged from starlight and blessed by entities of pure order. Sarah and the other senior students would maintain the monitoring station, ready to seal the portal behind them if necessary. "If we don't return within 72 hours, Aria instructed, "assume we've failed and activate the emergency protocols. Seal this facility, evacuate the city, and contact the Global Magical Council. You'll return, Sarah said with forced confidence. You always do. We always have before, Aria corrected gently. But there's a first time for everything. Maya arrived just as they were preparing to enter the portal, her face drawn with worry. She had become their unofficial liaison to the mundane world, helping to manage the public relations aspects of their work, while maintaining her own successful career as a journalist specializing in supernatural phenomena. I don't like this, she said without preamble. The reading Sarah's been showing me, the energy signatures coming through that tear, it all feels wrong. Dangerous in a way that's different from your usual impossible missions. I know, Aria said, embracing her oldest friend. But this isn't something we can delegate or postpone. If Veldris breaks through into our world with the kind of corrupted power he's been building. I know, Maya said softly. I've watched you both grow into these incredible people, watched you build something beautiful together. The thought of losing that, of losing you. You won't lose us, Thorne said, his voice carrying the authority of absolute conviction. We have faced death before, Maya. We've faced worse than death. And we've always found a way through because we face it together. Do you believe that? Aria asked him privately. I believe in us, he replied. I believe in what we've built, what we've become. And I believe that love is stronger than corruption, hope more powerful than despair. Even when facing someone who once knew all your weaknesses? Especially then, he said. Because Valdris knew the man I was, not the man I've become. He doesn't understand what I've learned from you, what we've learned together. The portal shimmered before them, its edges crackling with unstable energy. Through its surface, they could see glimpses of the dying world beyond, landscapes of twisted metal and crystallized suffering, skies the color of old blood, creatures that had once been beautiful transformed into things of crad, nightmare, and hunger. Remember, Thorne said as they approached the threshold, in that world, the very air may try to corrupt us. Stay close to me, trust in our bond, and don't let anything separate us. Nothing could separate us, Aria replied, taking his hand. Nothing ever has. They stepped through the portal together and immediately felt the wrongness of the world beyond. The air was thick with malevolent magic, every breath tasting of copper and despair. The ground beneath their feet was cracked and bleeding, oozing a substance that might once have been water but now pulsed with its own twisted life. This is worse than I expected, Thorne said, his mental voice tight with controlled horror. The corruption is complete. There's nothing left here that hasn't been touched by dark magic. How long do you think it took? Aria asked, surveying the devastation around them. How long for an entire world to die like this? Centuries, he replied grimly. This is the work of lifetimes, of generations of mages choosing power over wisdom, corruption over purity. They moved through the wasteland carefully, their enhanced senses alert for any sign of Valdris or his servants. The landscape was a study in organized decay cities that had been transformed into monuments to suffering. Forests where the trees screamed in voices too faint to hear but too agonized to ignore. Rivers that flowed uphill and burned everything they touched. He's here, Thorne said suddenly, his mental voice sharp with recognition. Close, very close. The attack came without warning, a wave of corrupted magic that sought to tear their minds apart and remake them in Valdris's image. Aria felt the assault like acid in her thoughts, like claws raking across her soul. But the bond between her and Thorne held firm, their joined strength deflecting the worst of the magical assault. Still hiding behind your mortal pet, I see, a voice said from the shadows, rich with mockery and ancient malice. How very like you, Thorne. Always were too weak to face your problems alone. Valdris emerged from behind a pillar of crystallized screams, and Aria gasped at the sight of him. He had once been handsome. She could see that much in the bone structure of his face, but centuries of dark magic had transformed him into something monstrous. His skin was pale as bone and covered with veins of black corruption. His eyes burned with fires that gave no warmth, And when he smiled, his teeth were stained with the essence of worlds he had devoured. Valdris, Thorne said, his voice steady despite the horror before them. You look, well, considering you spent the last millennium destroying everything you once claimed to love. Love? Valdris laughed, the sound like breaking glass mixed with dying whispers. I learned the futility of love from you, my king. Learned it when you chose your precious sorcerer over the good of your realm. When you let the gods destroy everything we had built. I chose freedom over slavery, Thorne Pa replied. I chose to believe that love could transcend the arbitrary rules imposed by beings who had forgotten what it meant to care about anything but power. And look how well that served you, Valdris sneered. 1,000 years in a mirror while I grew stronger than you ever dreamed possible. Strong enough to crack reality itself, to force my way into your perfect little world and remake it in my image. He's trying to provoke you, Aria warned. Don't let him. I know, Thorne replied. But he's also revealing his strategy. He wants to goad me into an emotional response, into fighting him with anger rather than wisdom. Then we give him neither, she said. We give him something he doesn't understand. Aloud, she said, You're afraid. Valdris's expression flickered with surprise. Afraid? Child, I have consumed the essence of entire civilizations. I have broken the minds of gods and feasted on the dreams of the innocent. What could I possibly fear from a mortal who has lived less than 3 decades? You're afraid because you know you're wrong, Aria continued, stepping forward despite every instinct screaming at her to run. You've spent centuries telling yourself that love is weakness, that caring about others makes you vulnerable. But deep down, you know the truth, that all your power, all your corruption, all your supposed strength, it's just a mask for the fact that you've never been loved, never been truly connected to another being. You think your petty human attachment makes you strong? Valdris snarled, raising his hands as dark energy crackled between his fingers. Let me show you what real power looks like. The magical assault was unlike anything Aria had ever experienced. It wasn't just an attack on her body, or even her mind. It was an assault on the very concept of hope, an attempt to make her believe that love was illusion, that connection was impossible, that she and Thorne were destined to be quat, along forever. But as the dark magic sought to tear apart her faith in their bond, she felt something unexpected, not fear, but pity, because she could see past Valdris's power to the emptiness beneath it, could sense the vast hollow space where his capacity for love should have been. He wasn't evil in the way she had imagined evil to be. He was simply empty, a void that had tried to fill itself of power and found that power without purpose was just another form of hunger. Now, she said to Thorne, not trying to fight Valdris's magic, but simply allowing it to pass through her, to reveal its own futility. Thorne stepped forward, his own power rising not as a weapon, but as an offering. Valdris, he said, his voice gentle despite the chaos around them. It doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to be alone anymore. Don't patronize me. Valdris screamed, pouring more power into his attack. I chose this. I chose strength over sentiment, power over pathetic vulnerability. You chose fear, Thorne said simply. You chose to believe that caring about others made you weak because it was easier than risking being hurt. But look at what it's cost your world, your people, your very soul. For a moment, something flickered in Valdris's burning surprise, recognition, perhaps even the faintest echo of regret. But then his expression hardened again, and the corrupted magic intensified. It's too late, he said, his voice now hollow with despair masquerading as determination. Even if I wanted to change, even if I wanted to be different, the corruption has gone too deep. I am what I am, and I can never be anything else. That's where he's wrong, Aria realized. He thinks transformation is impossible because he's never seen love powerful enough to overcome corruption. Then we show him, Thorne replied. Together, they reached out not with attack, but with acceptance, not with power, but with compassion. They opened their bond, their connection, their love, and offered it freely to the corrupted mage before them. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Valdris screamed as their combined essence touched the emptiness within him, as love encountered the void he had carved in his own soul. The dark magic that surrounded him began to crack and splinter, not destroyed but transformed, changed from corruption into something that might, someday, become healing. "Stop," he gasped, falling to his knees as centuries of accumulated pain crashed over him. "Please, stop. I can't bear it." "Yes, you can," Aria said, kneeling beside him despite every instinct that warned her against getting close to such a dangerous being. "Because you're not alone anymore. Because someone sees you, really sees you, and chooses to care anyway." "This is dangerous," Thorne warned. "If the corruption fights back, if it tries to spread to us, then we trust in what we've built," she replied. "We trust that our love is strong enough to contain it." The transformation took hours. Valdris writhed in agony as the dark magic that had sustained him for centuries began to unravel, as the emptiness within him slowly began to fill with something he had forgotten how to recognize. Around them, the dying world shuddered and began to change, not healing. Perhaps that was impossible, but at least stopping its descent into complete corruption. When it was over, when the last of the dark magic had been transformed or purged, Valdris looked up at them with eyes that were no longer burning voids but simply tired. Infinitely, incredibly tired. "Why?" he whispered. "Why would you risk everything for someone who has caused so much suffering?" "Because that's what love does," Aria said simply. "It sees the person beneath the pain, the possibility beneath the corruption. It believes in redemption even when redemption seems impossible." "I don't know how to be anything but what I am," he said, his voice broken with the porree. "Weight of centuries." "Then learn," Thorne said, extending his hand to help his former subject to his feet. "We'll teach you. It's what we do. Now help those who are lost find their way back to connection, back to hope." "Can we trust him?" Aria asked privately. "Can we afford not to?" Thorne replied. "He has power that could be used for great good or great evil. Better to try to guide him toward the light than to leave him to find his own way in the darkness." The journey back to their world was surreal. Valdris followed them like a lost child, his immense power now directionless, waiting for guidance. The portal they had entered through was still stable, though the readings from the other side showed massive energy fluctuations as Sarah and the others detected their approach. 3 life signs, Sarah reported as they stepped through. "But one of them is different, older, more powerful. This is Valdris," Aria said simply. "He's going to be staying with us for a while." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah stared at the corrupted mage with a mixture of professional curiosity and personal terror, while the other students backed away instinctively. "Is he safe?" one of them asked. "No," Bourne said honestly. "He's not safe. He may never be safe. But he's choosing to try to be better, and that's more than he's done in 1,000 years. Are we making a mistake?" Aria wondered, watching Valdris examine their modern magical equipment with the fascination of someone seeing new possibilities for the first time. "Probably," Thorne admitted. "But it's a mistake born of hope rather than fear, of love rather than hatred. And those are the kinds of mistakes worth making." The next months were unlike anything they had experienced before. Valdris was a difficult student, brilliant but damaged, powerful but lost, eager to learn but struggling against centuries of ingrained corruption. He had moments of genuine progress followed by setbacks that reminded everyone why he had been feared across multiple realms. But gradually, slowly, he began to change. The black veins of corruption that covered his skin began to fade. His eyes, while still ancient and tired, no longer burned with malevolent fire. Most importantly, he began to care again about his studies, about the people around him, about the possibility that he might someday become worthy of the second chance he had been given. "I dream of them sometimes," he told Aria one evening as they worked together in the Institute's garden, a space that had become his particular passion. The people I hurt, the worlds I helped destroy, they don't forgive me, I don't expect them to, but they watch, as if they're waiting to see what I'll become. What do you think they're hoping for? She asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. That their suffering meant something, he said quietly. That somewhere, somehow, good came from the evil I caused, but their deaths were not completely in vain. Then give them that, she said simply. Use what you learned from darkness to help others find the light. He's changing, she told Thorne that night as they lay in bed, the familiar comfort of their mental connection a warm presence in her thoughts. Yes, he agreed. But the real test will come when he faces his first real temptation, his first opportunity to choose power over principle. Do you think you'll pass? I think you'll try, Thorne said. And for now, that's enough. The test came sooner than expected. A delegation arrived at the Institute from the Celestial Council, the same beings who had once judged Thorne's love too dangerous and condemned him to imprisonment. They were magnificent and terrible, beings of pure light and absolute authority, and they were not pleased. We have observed the changes in this realm, their spokesman declared, his voice resonating with the power of stars. The increase in magical activity, the blurring of boundaries between worlds, the presence of corrupted beings among the innocent, this cannot be allowed to continue. Allowed? Aria stepped forward, her own power rising in response to the implicit threat. Since when do you have jurisdiction over our world? Since the moment you opened pathways between realms, the Celestial replied coldly. Since the moment you chose to harbor one who has committed atrocities across a dozen worlds. They were talking about Valdris, she realized. This wasn't about magical contamination or dimensional stability, this was about punishment, about the cosmic need for justice that seemed to drive these beings. Valdris has changed, Thorne said, his voice carefully controlled. He's chosen redemption over corruption, healing over harm. Has he? Another Celestial stepped forward, and with a gesture, projected images into the air, scenes of devastation from Valdris's past. Worlds stripped of life and hope, beings twisted into shapes of pure suffering. Can change truly erase such evil? Can good intentions undo centuries of malice? Valdris himself appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. When he saw the Celestials, he went very still, and for a moment Aria feared he might try to run or fight. Instead, he walked forward with quiet dignity and knelt before the beings who had once been his judges. I will not insult you with excuses, he said simply. I will not pretend that my recent choices erase the evil I have done. If you have come to execute judgment, I accept it. I ask only that you spare those who showed me mercy when I deserved none. The Celestials regarded him with expressions that might have been surprise, if beings of pure order were capable of such emotion. You do not deny your crimes? How could I? Valdris replied. They are written across multiple realities, carved into the very fabric of existence. But I do not deny my hope, either that the remainder of my existence might somehow balance the scales, might create more good than Nashta. The evil I have caused. Hope, the first Celestial repeated, as if the word were foreign to them. An interesting choice of words from one who spent centuries destroying it in others. They're going to try to take him, Thorne warned. I can feel their decision crystallizing. Then we stop them, Aria replied. We've come too far to let cosmic bureaucrats undo everything we've built. This could mean more with the celestial realm, he pointed out. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared for whatever it takes to protect the people I care about, she said firmly. But before they could act, Valdris spoke again. I have a proposal, he said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was facing. You wish to see justice done. I wish to atone for my crimes. Let me be your agent in the darker corners of existence. Let me hunt those who follow the path I once walked. Let me turn my knowledge of corruption against corruption itself. The Celestials exchanged glances that conveyed volumes of silent communication. Finally, their spokesman spoke. You would become our instrument? You would serve the very order you once sought to destroy? I would serve redemption, Valdres corrected. I would serve the possibility that even the darkest beings might find their way back to the light. If that serves your purposes as well, then perhaps we can find common ground. That's brilliant, Aria realized. He's offering to become exactly what they want while maintaining his own agency and purpose. It's also dangerous, Thorne warned. The Celestials are not known for their flexibility or forgiveness. If he fails them, if he falls back into old patterns, then we'll be there to catch him, she said simply. That's what family does. The negotiation took hours, but eventually an agreement was reached. Valdres would become a celestial agent, hunting corrupted beings across the dimensions and offering them the same choice he had been given: redemption or destruction. In return, the Celestials would allow the Institute to continue its work and would not interfere with the gradual integration of magic into the mundane world. This is highly irregular, the Celestial spokesman admitted as the contracts were signed in starlight and sealed with cosmic law. But perhaps irregularity is what is needed. The old ways, the rigid adherence to absolute order, have not prevented corruption from spreading. Perhaps it is time to try a different approach. Change, Aria thought to herself. Even cosmic beings can change, given the right motivation. After the Celestials departed, Valdres sought them out in the Institute's observatory, where they often went to think and plan. He looked different now, not physically, but there was something lighter about him, something that suggested the possibility of hope. Thank you, he said simply, for believing in redemption when I had given up on it myself, for showing me that change was possible, even for someone like me. What will you do now? Aria asked. Where will you start? There's a realm about 3 dimensions over where a young mage has begun experimenting with soul-eating magic, he said matter-of-factly. She reminds me of myself at that age, brilliant, ambitious, completely certain that the ends justify the means. I thought I might pay her a visit, show her what her path leads to. And if she won't listen, then I'll do what needs to be done, he said quietly. But I hope she'll be smarter than I was. I hope she'll choose love over power before it's too late. He really has changed, Thorne observed as they watched Valdres prepare for his first mission as a celestial agent. There's genuine compassion in him now, genuine desire to help rather than harm. Do you think it will last? Aria asked. Or will he fall back into old patterns when faced with real temptation? I think he'll struggle, Thorne said honestly. I think there will be moments when the old darkness calls to him, when the easy path of corruption seems more appealing than the difficult work of redemption. But I also think he has something now that he's never had before. What's that? People who believe in him, people who will fight for him even when he can't fight for himself. That makes all the difference. The years that followed brought new challenges and new victories. The Institute grew, becoming a beacon for magical education and interdimensional cooperation. Students came from dozens of worlds to learn not just the mechanics of magic but the ethics of power. The responsibility that came with the ability to reshape reality. Aria and Thorne's relationship deepened and evolved, their bond becoming not just a source of personal happiness, but a model for what magical partnership could achieve. They faced threats from corrupted dimensions, political challenges from governments still adjusting to magical reality, and the occasional cosmic crisis that required their particular combination of power and wisdom. Valdres became a legend in his own right. Though he shunned recognition and preferred to work in shadow, his success rate in redeeming corrupted beings was unprecedented, not perfect, but high enough to give hope to those who had thought certain souls were beyond saving. He sent another letter, Maya said one morning, delivering the mail to Aria's office. Handwritten, as usual. He still doesn't trust magical communication completely. The letter was brief, written in Valdres's careful script. The young necromancer has chosen life over death. The dimensional tears in Sector 7 are healing. I remember what sunlight feels like. Thank you for teaching me that remembering was possible. He's found his purpose, Aria told Thorne. He's become exactly what he was always meant to be, a guide for those lost in darkness. As have we all, Thorne replied. You, me, Valdris, even the Celestials in their own rigid way. We've all found our places in the grand pattern of existence. And what is our place? To be bridges, he said simply. To connect what was separated, to heal what was broken, to prove that love really can conquer any darkness if we're brave enough to try. Standing at the window of her office, looking out over the city that had become a model for magical and mundane coexistence, Aria reflected on the long journey that had brought them to this point. 7 years since a dare had led her to touch a mysterious mirror. 7 years since she had first heard Thorne's voice and felt the stirring of a love that would reshape both their worlds. Any regrets? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Only that it took us so long to find each other, he replied. But perhaps that's as it should be. Perhaps we needed to become who we were before we could become who we are together. And who are we together? We are proof that love transcends every boundary, conquers every obstacle, transforms every ending into a new beginning. We are the answer to the question of whether hope can triumph over despair, whether connection can overcome isolation, whether two hearts can truly become one while remaining uniquely themselves. That's quite a legacy, she said, smiling at the grandiosity of it. It's our legacy, he corrected. And it's just the beginning. The institute bell chimed the hour, calling students to their afternoon classes. In a few minutes, Aria would be teaching a seminar on ethical magic use to a class of young practitioners from 12 different dimensions. Later, she and Thorne would review applications for next year's exchange program, selecting the most promising candidates for advanced study. Tonight, they would have dinner with Maya and Sarah, continuing a tradition that had become one of the small constants in their ever-changing lives. It was, she reflected, a good life. A meaningful life. A life that proved every day that touching the blood mirror had been not a curse, but the greatest blessing either of them could have imagined. Ready for the next adventure? Thorne asked, sensing her mood through their connection. With you? She replied, echoing words she had spoken years before. Always. Hand in hand, they walked through the halls of the institute they had built, past students from a dozen worlds learning to use their gifts wisely, past laboratories where the impossible was studied with scientific rigor, past gardens where corrupted magic was slowly transformed into tools of healing and growth. They were no longer the desperate souls who had found each other across an impossible divide. They were partners, equals, guardians of a new world where magic and mundane reality danced together in perfect harmony. They had touched the blood mirror and been bound to each other, but more than that, they had chosen that binding, had made it their own, had used it to create something beautiful and lasting and true. The future stretched out before them, infinite with possibility, bright with hope, warm with the promise of love that would endure through all the ages to come. They had changed the world, but the world had changed them too, making them into the best versions of themselves, versions that could face any challenge, overcome any obstacle, transform any ending into a new and better accuracy. Beginning. Together they had become proof that some bonds are stronger than death, some love more powerful than magic, and some choices capable of reshaping the very foundations of reality itself. And as they walked forward into whatever adventures awaited them, their hands clasped and their hearts beating in perfect synchrony, they carried with them the knowledge that they had found something rarer than any treasure, more valuable than any power, more lasting than any monument. They had found each other, and that was enough to make any world, any reality, any existence worth living.